Mr. Boissonnault, thanks for coming in on a snowy Thursday.
My pleasure, Michael.
Swearing-in ceremonies tomorrow, Friday, for the new Prime Minister, his cabinet as well. Where do you feel Mark Carney's leadership leaves your government as it squares off against a tariff-hungry Trump administration?
Well, look, I think the Liberal Party is the best party that we have in the country to defend against Donald Trump, his tariffs. I was in Washington only 2 weeks ago, meeting with Republicans, meeting with Democrats. It is a country divided, and the president wants what the president wants, and so we have to be on guard, elbows up. The tariff response is serious because it has to be, because the president responds to strength. Mr. Carney brings global experience, managing both the Central Bank of Canada and England, and is also very calm force. I think he positions our party for the best position in 4 years. But more importantly, he will position Canada to take on what is an existential threat. I'd never thought I'd be on a newscast talking with you about annexation from our greatest trading partner and former ally. We are at a point now where we can't trust the Americans. We have to negotiate with them. They want transactional diplomacy, and that's why we have ministers there today to bring the temperature down so that we can get these tariffs off and get back to trading in a way that makes sense to the president, but also makes sense to Canadians.
Mr. Carney needs a team behind him.
Absolutely.
So that team, the cabinet, will be announced tomorrow. Your expectations for that, and how do you respond to the media reports today that Stephen Guilbeault is out as environment minister?
Well, what I'm seeing in the press is the same thing you're seeing, smaller cabinet, focused cabinet, on the fact that we are literally on a footing of having to defend our sovereignty and having to defend every inch of our economic sovereignty as well. So I'm anticipating a smaller cabinet. Minister Guilbeault serves his constituents and Canadians well. He's a very distinguished and talented MP. Whatever role Mr. Carney decides to give Mr. Guilbeault, he will do that role well. He and I worked on the Jasper file together. He's been, look, he wants to make sure that we save the planet. And we have to do that because it's a smart thing to do from a trading perspective. If the Prime Minister designate Prime Minister tomorrow asks Mr. Guilbeault to serve in a different capacity, he'll do so ably.
Lots of pressure on Mr. Carney now to trigger an election. Rumblings of maybe it's April 28th, maybe it's May the 5th. How do you weigh the necessity to earn a mandate sooner than later in terms of dealing with Mr. Trump?
So I was on the doors last week before I went to Ottawa for leadership, and what I heard from people is, call the election soon. We need a mandate. We want to support you. They were talking to me, and they said, we need to know who our government is. It's interesting, Michael, we elect parliaments. This time we're electing a government. And there's really only two choices as to who can lead the government in this, in the face of these Trump tariffs. And it's the Conservatives or the Liberals. And for my money, I'm on the Liberal ticket. And we've faced off against Donald Trump before. We negotiated a successful trade deal. This Trump administration is different. It's aggressive. There are expansionist, imperialist tendencies. And so we need a strong government to be able to face off.
Well, and as you do that door knocking then, how do you answer to your constituents' anxieties over this accelerated talk of annexation, this making Canada a 51st state? What do you say to calm people down?
I take it on and I say, look them right in the eye. I say we will never become the 51st state of the United States, full stop. We have leverage. We have things the United States needs. We will play all of those cards in this high-stakes negotiation for the future of our country. And what I say to people is, I've been doing this now for 10 years. I understand how government works. The reason I went to Washington 2 weeks ago was to use my contacts, my knowledge of how Washington works to make the case for Alberta and for Western Canada and for Canadians that if you pick a fight with Canada, Canada's going to fight back. And there's another thing that we said. I went there with Ben Carr, who's the MP for Winnipeg South Centre. We said, I don't know what the tolerance for pain in the United States is, Senator, but we can guarantee you that the tolerance for pain in Canada is higher. And so we're squaring off against the Americans. And as Prime Minister Carney said, whether it's in trade or in hockey, Canada wins.
Where do you weigh in on oil and gas being used as a retaliation tool?
What I really liked about this leadership race, Michael, is it gave Canadians permission to be proud of the fact that we have natural resources. I was at the leadership. I heard what soon-to-be Prime Minister Carney said, which is this. We are going to be an energy superpower in both conventional and renewables. That brings everybody together. This is not a time to, pick fights over jurisdiction and to pick fights over the fact that we have these resources. We're going to need them. You know why? Because we're going to have to spend money on our own military. We're going to have to join forces with countries around the world in a way that we've never done before in the protection of Ukraine, in the protection of our own sovereignty. You get the sovereignty you pay for, and it's going to come. We're now at the point where Canadians are going to have to lean in. That means developing more of our resources, and we don't have time to pick jurisdictional squabbles. It's Team Canada.
How do you feel about adopting conservative positioning on ditching the carbon tax?
It's already part of the plan. There won't be a carbon tax on the consumer price on pollution heading into this next campaign. You'll see that. Mr. Carney was very clear about that. And it's really important that in a time of affordability, when we're facing the greatest economic threat to our country in my lifetime, that we come together as Canadians, elbows up, Canada strong, and that we're buying Canadian, we're traveling in our own country, because we need the Americans to see that we have resolve and that we're serious. And that's the hope that I have for this campaign, is that we're going to come together as a country. We're going to send a clear message to the world that we're united and that we can face these tariffs from the United States. And we have common cause, Michael, with the European Union, with Australia, with other countries that the United States is picking on, no more so than Canada. And so we're going to take this fight to the Americans through and right after the election.
Okay, we're going into overtime here, but
Sure.
I need to ask, because
Sure.
you're addressing a largely Alberta audience. What do you feel a Carney-led Liberal Party has to offer Albertans that would draw support?
Fiscal responsibility, social justice, international leadership, pride in our natural resources, and a leader who has Edmonton roots, Western roots, and understands that we're better when we're all together, and that we can be Canada strong, united. And look, in this next election, you don't have to be Liberal to vote Liberal, but it's certainly going to help us defend our country.
All right, Mr. Boissonnault, I'll have to leave it there.